All right, just working on my miming skills there. So, how's it going, Bio 20s? We're ready for another lesson here. Today we're going to finish up chapter 2, and we're going to talk about energy transfer in an ecosystem as well as ecological modeling. So, starting off here, an ecosystem needs to run with these two processes, photosynthesis and cell respiration. However, you can sometimes substitute the photosynthesis in very rare occasions, say where sunlight isn't available. I'll chat about that in a second. So as we know, photosynthesis, this is how plants and photosynthetic autotrophs make their food. And then we eat food and convert it into energy through the process of cellular respiration. But in areas where sunlight isn't available, so deep down in the ocean, next to these thermal vents, there's some very special creatures down there. They're called chemoautotrophs. So they are autotrophs that can make their own food through the process of chemosynthesis. So what they do is they actually use things like sulfur or simple molecules, and they can actually convert them into energy without the need of sunlight. So basically you need at least a photosynthetic organism or a chemoautotroph to start your ecosystem. From there, you can branch off based on food chains and food webs on who eats who, but you need that base. You need that base of an ecosystem to get things going. Now, in terms of energy transfer, every time we move from one trophic level to another, there's going to be a reduction in energy transfer. And this is because, let's just think of it for a second, okay? Plant takes in sunlight, all this other stuff, and uses it to make glucose, okay? Now, when the plant then uses that glucose for its cell processes, that energy is gone, right? To run its cells and basically be alive, energy is needed. Also, when, let's say, a rabbit comes along and eats a plant, is it going to eat every single part of the plant? Every single blade of grass? All of the root system? Is it going to eat all of it? No, probably not. So it leaves some of that out as well. So energy is not always fully available to the next level. You never get 100% of the energy available because most of it gets lost through bodily metabolism, not eating the entire organism, and usually a lot of it gets lost as heat as well. So when we think of things being lost, also it's lost through feces as well. Only 10% of energy is actually passed on to the next level. So when you factor in all those things, so you factor in, say, energy loss through feces, because you can't get that back, energy loss through heat, so thermal energy, energy needed for basic life functions like digestion or cell respiration, also the fact that you're probably not eating the tree bark or the roots. When you factor all that together, you're only getting about 10% of the energy available passed on to the next level. So, as we move along here, the farther up you go, the less energy you're going to have. Because let's say you start off with 10,000 kilojoules of energy. How much is left over to the second trophic level? We have, move the decimal one place. Now we have 1,000 kilojoules of energy. What's left over to the third trophic level? 100 kilojoules. Then the next trophic level, 10. And then eventually we're going to reach the point where there's just not enough energy available. This is why most food chains and food webs are limited to about 5 trophic levels. That's kind of the limit. Not a rule. Sometimes we can go a little past that, but mostly 5 is going to be our limit because, as you can see here, you're going to run out of energy. Right? Eventually, you're just going to run out of energy and there's just not enough of energy available. You're going to have to eat so many organisms to actually just maintain your dietary needs that being at the very top of the food chain doesn't necessarily mean it's not necessarily a good thing in terms of grabbing energy, because if that energy is not available, you need to eat a lot of it to maintain your dietary and energy requirements. So, leading into thermodynamics, first law of thermodynamics, and I'm sure you've heard these before, but I'll reiterate them for you. Energy cannot be destroyed or created. It can only be transferred or changed from one form to another. So energy can be changed from this form to another, but you can't just build energy, you can't just destroy energy. Second law of thermodynamics, basically, no energy conversion is 100% efficient. Some energy will be then converted into an unusable, unseeable form, in the form usually of thermal energy. So you actually can't use that thermal energy, it's given off as, say, a waste product. So for example, we have, this was the example I used, 10,000 kilocalories or 10,000 kilojoules of energy. You only get about 1,000 going to the rabbits, right? A ton has lost its heat, and then a ton will be left over as well. Then how much do the snakes get? 100. What do the eagles get? 10. So you can't have a bunch of eagles, right? If you got a bunch of eagles in the ecosystem, it's going to throw off the whole ecosystem because there's not going to be enough food for the eagles, right? So this is going to lead into our talk about pyramids, because you'll notice we almost have this pyramid structure based on how many organisms we have in this ecosystem, right? So we have this, it looks like a pyramid. And this is good. We want a pyramid. I'm going to explain why a pyramid is so important. Now, there's three types of pyramids out there. So an ecological pyramid will represent energy flow in a food chain and food web, and they give us a visual of the relationship within this ecosystem. And the three types that we're going to talk about are pyramids of numbers, pyramids of biomass, and pyramids of energy. So a pyramid of numbers is really simple. It's the number of organisms in an ecosystem. So we can see here that we have grasses. Second level, we have grasshoppers, snails, and slugs. Third level, we have shrews and moles. And fourth level, we have owls. So this is our pyramid of numbers, and we have the numbers of each. So we throw everything in each trophic level into our pyramid of numbers. What if I threw things off here? Let's say, for example, there's an explosion of aphids. Just aphids going like crazy. Well, this doesn't look very much like a stable pyramid, does it? Because what's happening here is there's way too many aphids. The aphids are going to completely decimate the first trophic level. Yes, the third level is going to be happy for a little while, the mantises and the ladybugs, but eventually, when the aphids run out of food, the aphids are going to fall apart, and then all the other levels are going to fall apart as well. Basically, if the bottom of the pyramid, so your producers, if they fall apart, your entire ecosystem is going to collapse on itself. That's why you need a strong base of producers to support the rest of the ecosystem. All right, next pyramid is a pyramid of biomass. So a pyramid of biomass is essentially the total dry biomass, so not including water, of material in the ecosystem. So for example, we have 976 grams of moss and algae. We have 45 grams of duck, 9 grams of falcon. This is a measure of stored energy, because this is energy stored in these organisms. This isn't available energy, this is energy stored, okay? So biomass and energy pyramids are different. Biomass will be in grams or kilograms or a weight of some kind, and it's a measure of stored energy in the ecosystem. Finally, we have the pyramid of energy. So the pyramid of energy is going to show the available energy in the ecosystem. So we're going to see at each trophic level how the energy moves along. So, for example, we have our first trophic level, second, third, and fourth, and we see how the energy is slowly decreased over time. Now, it's not always a perfect 10%, because when we go into the field and we do an actual study, it's not going to be exactly 10%, it's going to be roughly 10%. So for the purpose of this class, we're always going to use 10%, right? But if you go into the field and actually gather numbers, you're probably not going to get an exact amount. Now, you'll notice here though, good base of trophic levels. We have the energy in the total trophic level. Then we have the next trophic level, the third and the fourth. We see how that number is decreasing as we go up. Because once again, roughly 10% is available. So let's just end here with a quick example. Let's say, for example, you have 22,000 kilojoules of energy. How much energy would be available to the secondary consumers? A few things we need to consider here. This amount of energy is available to the producers. So this is the amount of energy in the producers, and they make up the first trophic level. All right, secondary consumers make up what trophic level? If you said third, you would be correct. And this is where people get a little confused because they think secondary, they make up the second trophic level, but we have to remember, plants and producers are in the first, primary consumers are in the second. This makes secondary consumers in the third trophic level. So all we would do is we would multiply 22,000 by 10%, or 0.1, and then 10%, or 0.1 again, and then we get 220 kilojoules are available to that second level. Also, another trick you can do is you can just move the decimal. So since we're just dealing in 10%, you can just move the decimal 2 places, and it gets you the same answer of 220. So that's all I have for you today. Next lesson, we're going to be getting into the biogeochemical cycles. So we're going to talk about the water cycle, the carbon cycle, the nitrogen cycle, as well as the phosphorus cycle. So thanks again for watching, and we'll chat soon.